The Galactic Empire is known for its institutions and symbols to project its strength across the stars. From the vaunted Stormtrooper Corps in their bone white armor to the Emperor's enforcer Darth Vader, clad in midnight black, its signature dagger-like star destroyers, and its iconic twin-ion engine fighters. The visual imagery of the Empire is distinctive and effective. Another such institution, never far from their master, are the Imperial Royal Guard, dressed head to toe in crimson with black slit visors. They hold a position of utmost importance, guarding the life of the Emperor himself. They are the most loyal, unwavering sentinels in the galaxy. Or so it seems.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Guardians. In the shadows of the Galactic Empire, the Emperor's Royal Guard stood as a formidable presence, the elite protector of Emperor Palpatine. Their exact numbers remain shrouded in mystery, rumored to range from less than 50 to tens of thousands. Yet it was believed that at any moment, at least 400 elite soldiers answered only to the Emperor himself. The size of the Royal Guard remained a closely guarded secret, known only to Palpatine and a select few Imperial officers. The Royal Guard emerged from the legacy of the Red Guard of the Galactic Republic, blending traditions to form an elite cadre of warriors. After the Emperor's initial demise during the Battle of Endor, the unit was shattered, drifting in the void of leadership. Yet, upon Palpatine's resurrection in cloned bodies, the Guard was reformed on Biss, thrust into the fray once more. Their loyalty was tested as they faced cataclysmic destruction at the hands of the Galaxy Gun and Palpatine's flagship, the Eclipse II. Despite their fierce loyalty, they were not immune from the chaos and infighting that befell the Empire after the death of Palpatine. When the Empire was a fractured husk of warlords after the Battle of Endor, and the Emperor's clones were prepared to ascend amidst eternal treachery, Karnor Jax, a member of the unit, colluded with Palpatine's physician in a desperate maneuver to claim the Emperor's throne for himself. This betrayal sparked a brutal massacre of the surviving members on Yinkor, leaving only Kur Kanos, a loyal guardsman, alive. Driven by fervent loyalty to Palpatine's memory, Kanos embarked on a relentless quest to avenge his fallen comrades, determined to eliminate those responsible for the chaos and restore the legacy of the Emperor he revered. In this tale of treachery and fidelity, one man's loyalty became a relentless crusade against the shadows of betrayal. Training.
Handpicked by the Emperor himself, the Emperor's Royal Guard was whispered about as an elite and formidable fighting force, their loyalty forged in the crucible of indoctrination. These warriors were more than mere bodyguards. They were utterly devoted to the Emperor, ready to lay down their lives at his command without hesitation. Trained for unwavering service, they would turn on each other with ruthless efficiency if ordered. They were stoic warriors, even in the face of injury. They bore their pain in silence and never sought mercy. Trained rigorously at the Imperial Royal Guard Academy on the desolate planet Yinkor, once verdant but rendered barren by the Empire's genocidal airstrikes, these formidable warriors met challenges that forged an unwavering loyalty to the Emperor. Their training was brutal. Cadets often faced one another in deadly contests, honing not just their strength and cunning, but their devotion to Palpatine. Mastery of various martial arts, including the lethal Echani style, became second nature, and they wielded vibro swords, force pikes, and heavy blaster pistols with lethal efficiency. Attrition was high, as most students would die in training and selection process, often leaving only 1 or 2 survivors per class, typically from starting group of 40. Candidates were chosen from the most elite stormtroopers, evaluated for size, strength, intelligence, loyalty, and latent force sensitivity. Those with stronger force potential were elevated to the rank of sovereign protectors and trained by Dark Jedi. Recruits underwent a grueling year-long training program designed to hone their combat skills to perfection. Unlike the squad-based stormtrooper training on Carida, this regimen emphasized individual prowess and teamwork in pairs, pushing trainees to rely on themselves or a single partner to achieve victory. The final test was a battle to the death before Emperor Palpatine himself, where only the most loyal and skilled candidates emerged victorious. Kir Kanos, despite his success, was haunted by the necessity of killing his sparring partner. His regret was swiftly silenced when Darth Vader brought a lightsaber dangerously close to his face, leaving a scar and delivering a stern lesson in order from Emperor must never be questioned or regretted. Despite their fervent dedication, shadows of ambition sometimes lurked among them, strategically cultivated by Palpatine himself. Due to their extreme psycho-indoctrination and conditioning, many found their identities shattered with Palpatine's death, believing the Royal Guard had been extinguished and their purpose, the protection of the Emperor, void. Scattered and purposeless, some defected, while others continued their loyal service to the ideals of the Empire and rose through the ranks to become generals, continuing their service in a different guise. Their primary duties included safeguarding Palpatine, protecting his clandestine facilities and clone laboratories on Biss, and securing his Imperial Citadel. This prestigious role was typically reserved for the Sovereign Protectors, who worked tirelessly to thwart any assassination attempts against their master, and sometimes acted as assassins themselves. The punishment for failure was severe, often resulting in a painful death, although sometimes a failed warrior could be given a chance at redemption if they owned their errors and threw themselves at the mercy of their master. Always at the Emperor's side, at least 2 guardsmen were within earshot of Palpatine at all times, leaving only one commanded. Some were entrusted with operating the training facility on Yinkor, while others provided security at the Emperor's various hideaways. Palpatine frequently loaned detachments to his most trusted allies, often blurring the lines between protection and surveillance for signs of disloyalty. Over time, the Royal Guard became one of the Empire's most recognizable and iconic units, their striking armor setting them apart. While grounded in personal protection rather than frontline combat, small units of Royal Guardsmen occasionally joined stormtrooper battalions to maintain combat readiness, ensuring they were never dispersed from their ranks, and could exchange their traditional robes and armor for a Crimson Stormtrooper variant. In this unyielding fidelity to the Emperor, the Royal Guard crafted a legacy as both protectors and enforcers in the turbulent saga of the Galactic Empire.
Organization. Within the imposing hierarchy of the Galactic Empire, the Royal Guard stood as a bastion of elite warriors. Yet beneath their renowned facade lay a tapestry of ranks and specialized divisions, designed by Emperor Palpatine to cultivate ambition among his subjects. By establishing a lofty and nearly unattainable goals, the Emperor ensured his followers remained perpetually motivated in their pursuit of status, weaving a web of aspiration that allowed him to maintain tight control over them. At the pinnacle of this elite structure was the Emperor's Shadow Guard, a formidable offshoot of the Royal Guard, clad in black variations of their crimson counterparts. These special operatives were chosen for their skill and sent on clandestine missions that were executed under the Emperor's direct orders. The Shadow Guard wielded lightsaber pikes as their weapons of choice, and were trained not only in combat, but also to harness the dark side of the Force, making them both feared figures rarely seen in the public eye. Among the Royal Guard's ranks, the Imperial Sovereign Protectors represented the apex of power and prestige. These Force-sensitive warriors were selected for advanced training in the dark arts of the Force, mentored by the Inquisitorius on distant worlds like Prakith. Adorned in dark uniform variants of the Standard Guard, reflecting their status, the Sovereign Protectors excelled in close quarters combat, employing vibro blades to devastating effect as they engaged enemies directly. As Palpatine's reign progressed, it was rumored he envisioned even more elevated roles within the Guard, yet the Sovereign Protectors remained the highest accolade achievable amidst the Royal Guard's hierarchy before his eventual downfall. Additionally, the prestigious role of Master Instructor was held by the most seasoned Guardsmen, tasking with honing the skills of new recruits at the Royal Guard Academy. Beyond these realms, divisions like the Imperial Senate Guard, who wore a blue armor variant, and the Imperial Senate Sentinel, clad in argent, existed, although their precise relationship to the Royal Guard remained uncertain. In this intricate network of loyalty and ambition, each member vied for greater purpose, driven by the shadow of the Emperor's legacy, with every aspiration tightly wound around the dark ambitions of their master.
Imperial Senate Guard. A successor to the Republic Senate Guard, this was an elite force loyal to Emperor Palpatine and the New Order. Their blue armor, a variation of the Royal Guard's red and black, signified their allegiance while honoring their roots. Trained in melee combat, they wielded Cortosis staffs and energy shields capable of deflecting lightsaber strikes. A specialized division, the Imperial Senate Sentinels, extended their capabilities. While ostensibly protectors of the Imperial Senate and its members, their true loyalty lay with Palpatine. Their responsibilities included safeguarding key installations, escorting high-ranking officials, conducting assassinations, and hunting Force sensitives. Though not formally part of the Imperial military, they collaborated when missions required, such as 2 BBY operation alongside stormtroopers and shadow guards to capture Jedi fugitive Ram Koda in Cloud City. However, they were annihilated by Starkiller, Darth Vader's secret apprentice, who sought Koda's expertise against the Empire. The Senate Guards faced Starkiller again on Kashyyyk, where they fell alongside Imperial forces and Captain Oswick Stern. Their final stand occurred aboard the Death Star, during Starkiller's mission to rescue rebel leaders. Alongside the Emperor's Royal Guards, they failed to stop the apprentice, who ultimately fell to Palpatine while ensuring the rebels' escape.
Imperial Senate Sentinel. It is a specialized division of the Imperial Senate Guard. They were tasked by Emperor Palpatine to safeguard the ruins of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Dressed in distinctive gray-white armor resembling late Clone Wars era Senate Guards, their appearance diverged from the crimson robes of the Emperor's Royal Guard. Equipped with force pikes capable of countering Jedi lightsabers, the Sentinels were formidable combatants, and were rumored to be cyborgs, with robotic voicings added to their eerie demeanor. Though not part of the military, the Sentinels collaborated with its forces when needed. Their primary mission was twofold: to protect the temple from looters and to eliminate any returning Jedi. In 2 BBY, they encountered Darth Vader's apprentice, Galen Marek, during his visits to the temple for training. Despite their specialized training and advanced weaponry, many Sentinels fell to Marek in multiple confrontations. Initially, they warned him of a quarantine imposed by the Emperor, but in later encounters, they attacked him outright, without hesitation, ultimately unable to stop his progress.
The Saber Guard. Established under the Saber program, they were Force-sensitive warriors who served the Galactic Empire with a specialization in lightsaber combat. Trained on Kamino's secret cloning facilities, such as Tamira City, rather than Yinkor, They wielded dual red light-bladed lightsabers and exhibited limited force abilities, including force resistance, saber throw, and force barriers. Their armor, resembling that of the Sun Guard and Royal Guards, was resistant to lightsaber strikes, but they were notably susceptible to the force, repulse attack, and mind tricks. Saber Guards often fought alongside the Acolytes from the Acolyte program, creating a fearsome duo within the Empire's military. They participated in pivotal battles, including the assault on Kamino, where they boarded the rebel flagship Salvation, swiftly overtaking critical areas like the hangar, engine room, and bridge. Despite their dominance over rebel forces, the Saber Guards were ultimately outmatched and exterminated by Starkiller, a clone of Darth Vader's secret apprentice. During the Rebel Alliance's assault on Kamino, Saber Guards defended Tamara City and its cloning facilities alongside the Imperial garrison. They faced Starkiller again, but failed to halt his advance, suffering heavy casualties. As the Alliance triumphed, the surviving Saber Guards likely perished alongside the remnants of the Imperial forces on Kamino.
Shadow Guard. The Emperor's Shadow Guard, an elite special operations unit within the Royal Guard, was formed from force-sensitive recruits, particularly from the defeated Sun Guard mercenaries, to serve the Galactic Empire during the Great Jedi Purge. Trained by Darth Vader, they executed direct orders from Emperor Palpatine and were tasked primarily with guarding him, eliminating suspected Jedi, and targeting other Force users. Some rumors suggested they were brainwashed, former Jedi, but this was never confirmed. They served as Palpatine's protectors and enforcers, commanding respect within the Empire and leading stormtrooper squadrons into battle. Their skill set included Force Lightning, Force Push, Force Choke, Force Maelstrom, and more, making them formidable opponents. They wielded lightsaber pikes with red blades, heavy blaster pistols, encrypted comlinks with holo capability, medpacks, utility belts, and occasionally cloaking devices. Their armor, an inverted black version of the Royal Guard's armor, was both functional and ceremonial, offering significant protection. The last known Shadow Guard led Palpatine's defense on the first Death Star against the renegade Galen Marek. However, he was killed in combat with Vader's wayward apprentice. Mystique.
The Royal Guard, shrouded in myth and legend, often obscured the truth of their existence, intentionally to hide their strength and capabilities. Whispers and rumors swirled around the unit, leaving many to speculate whether its members were clones, elite recruits, or a blend of both. Some believed their formidable reputation was merely a construct of propaganda, questioning their status as true elite fighting forces. Others claimed that a keen observer could easily distinguish a stormtrooper from an Imperial Guardsman. Yet these notions fell short of reality. The Guardsmen were indeed highly skilled warriors, adept at masking their true identities within the Imperial ranks. One notable guard managed to masquerade as a major for 8 months, his true identity only revealed through meticulous examination of Imperial records. Additionally, a popular rumor suggested that no guard had ever fallen in combat. While Han Solo dismissed this idea as a fabrication, Wedge Antilles seemed to find solace in the belief, remarking, quote, "Someone's got to be the best of the best," and noting the rarity of their number. Like other branches of the Imperial hierarchy, the Royal Guard boasted its own distinct insignia and banner, a striking design of black with red borders adorned with a crimson crest. This emblem was a familiar sight wherever they operated, including the Emperor's retreat on Naboo, solidifying their presence wherever they found themselves within the Empire.
History. In the tumultuous days of the Galactic Republic, the roots of the Royal Guard took hold, born from the need for heightened security around Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Following an assassination attempt and growing concerns over corruption within the Senate Guard, known to traditionally wear blue, The Red Guard emerged as a specialized bodyguard unit composed of elite soldiers, including skilled Senate commandos and members of the now defunct Sun Guard, an infamous Thurzan mercenary company. As Palpatine navigated the political landscape, especially during the crisis of the Clone Wars, the Red Guard stood resolutely by his side. Their presence was unmistakable, often seen flanking him during significant events, such as the trial of Ahsoka Tano. However, their reputation was complex. Well respected for their combat skills, whispers of secrecy and suspicion surrounded their ranks, even leading to the Jedi Council to ponder the possibility of Sith infiltration. During the chaotic battle of Coruscant, the Red Guard fought valiantly to protect Palpatine, but as the dust settled on the Republic's victory, the Chancellor revealed his true identity as Darth Sidious, the Dark Lord of the Sith. This revelation marked a turning point, as Palpatine transformed the Republic into the Galactic Empire, reorganizing the Red Guard into the Imperial Royal Guard, continuing to serve in their crimson armor and face-concealing helmets. They became the embodiment of his new regime, wielding lethal force pikes as symbols of their unwavering loyalty to the Emperor. Notable deployments.
As the Galactic Empire emerged from the ashes of the Republic, clad in crimson and shrouded in silence, these sentinels became a symbol of loyalty and intimidation, ensuring the Emperor's safety during his interstellar travels and within the Imperial Palace on Coruscant. Together with the Coruscant Guard, they oversaw the capital's security, meticulously inspecting items bound for the Emperor's private chambers. In 19 BBY, the Royal Guard witnessed Darth Vader's summons to rescue Admiral Garrosh Tarkin. Their loyalty was tested repeatedly, such as during an attack on Aeroth 6 that claimed many of their lives, prompting Vader to disdainfully note their failure should the Emperor have perished. On another occasion, 2 guardsmen accompanied Vader to quash the Hen Snake cult after its assassination attempt on Palpatine. Amidst the New Order's dominance, resistance simmered, notably from Bail Organa of Alderaan. To stifle dissent, the Emperor used his daughter, Leia Organa, as a political hostage, dispatching royal guards to escort her to Kashyyyk. These guards fell to the rogue Force user Galen Marek, who also decimated the Emperor's defenders aboard the Death Star 1 during its construction. The Royal Guard faced numerous threats during their service. In 1 BBY, they repelled an assassination attempt by the anti-Sith conspiracy led by Grand Moff Trachta, though many perished in a bombing that halved their number. Despite this, the survivors triumphed over traitor stormtroopers aligned with another rogue, Moff Kadir. Yet not all guardsmen remained steadfast. Vin Northal, disillusioned by the Empire's cruelty, defected to the Rebel Alliance, proving that, despite all their training, loyalty, and psychological conditioning, some could still fall away from their mission. As the Galactic Civil War unfolded, the Royal Guard's presence loomed across key moments. On Bathory, they accompanied Palpatine as he ruthlessly suppressed the Bothans for their rebel ties. Their ranks were stationed aboard the Death Star 1 and later its successor, battling infiltrators like Rebel Operative X2 and Tiber Zan's mercenaries. Ultimately, many met their end alongside their Emperor when the Death Star 2 fell during the Battle of Endor, sealing their legacy as unwavering protectors to the bitter end. However, they were not totally extinguished.
Broken legacy, fractured loyalty. After Emperor Palpatine's death, the once unified Royal Guard fractured, scattering across the galaxy as the Galactic Empire splintered. Some followed ambitious warlords, others disappeared into the deep core, and few sought new masters among the chaos. A number of guardsmen, unable to face life without their emperor, committed mass suicides. Others gravitated toward enigmatic figures like Lord Shadowspawn or the prophets of the dark side, who promised Palpatine's return. Among those who survived was Grodin Tierce, who abandoned his ceremonial armor to serve as a stormtrooper, eventually aligning with the Grand Admiral Thrawn. The disbanded guardsmen adapted to the shifting power dynamics of the Empire's collapse. Several served Sate Pestage and Grand Vizier, even escorting him on diplomatic missions to negotiate with the New Republic. In 5 ABY, some guardsmen appeared at the Central Committee of Grand Moffs, where their loyalty was tested by Trioculus, a claimant to Palpatine's legacy. Skeptical of his lineage and lack of authority, symbols like the glove of Darth Vader, the guards voiced their doubts, until Trioculus silenced them with a brutal display of Force lightning. As Imperial power waned, the Royal Guard remained active in pockets. During the New Republic's assault on Coruscant in 6 ABY, guardsmen fought alongside local security forces, but were ultimately overwhelmed. By 7.5 ABY, Hussein Usard, the ruthless director of Imperial intelligence, secured the allegiance of some surviving guardsmen. They became her bodyguards, distinguished by black helms on their crimson robes, and later served as enforcers under her rule on Thyfera. Among these guards was Karnor Jax, a Force-sensitive soldier who became the Sith apprentice of Lumia, donning crimson stormtrooper armor as part of her elite strike force. While some guardsmen, like Tierce, blended into stormtrooper ranks, others, such as Kir Kanos, refused to align with any faction, choosing instead to honor the Emperor's memory independently. The legacy of the Royal Guard thus fragmented, some fading into anonymity, and others shaping themselves as agents of new Imperial leaders, and a few charting their own course amidst the ruins of the Empire. Reformation.
In 10 ABY, the Emperor's Royal Guard heeded the call to Biss, summoned by the reborn Palpatine. They stood as his loyal defenders until his final demise a year later. However, it was revealed that Palpatine's end had been hastened by treachery from within. Renegade Protector Karnor Jax had sabotaged the Emperor's clones. A guardsman overheard the Emperor's physician confess his complicity in the plot to Luke Skywalker. Determined to alert his brethren, the Guard was ambushed by Imperial forces loyal to Jax before he could spread the warning. After the catastrophic battles on Biss and the Eclipse II, the few surviving Royal Guards retreated to Yinkor to grieve their fallen Emperor and plot their revenge. Yet, their attempt to rally was thwarted when Jax laid a deadly trap. Stormtroopers slaughtered the gathering guardsmen, in a grim parallel to the Jedi Order's fate decades earlier at the hands of the clone troopers. Only Kir Kanos survived, escaping the massacre to exact vengeance. In a climactic duel on the Squall, he defeated Jax and vowed to hunt down all those responsible for Palpatine's death. By 12 ABY, the Scarlet-clad Guards re-emerged under Admiral Natassi Dalla. Dalla employed them to bolster her commanding image as she sought to unify the fractured remnants of the Empire. The Guards stood as symbols of Imperial authority during her speeches at armament factories and shipyards, lending her an aura of leadership in the struggle against the New Republic. Elsewhere, some guardsmen served the ambitions of X-1 during the Battle of Mustafar, but they fell to the blade of his clone brother X-2. 7 years later, 4 stormtroopers were elevated to Royal Guards by Admiral Dalla. These guards became key players in the foundation of the Second Imperium, a movement aimed at reviving the Empire's dominance. Deceiving their fellows with claims of another reborn Palpatine, they formed the Shadow Academy, training an army of dark Jedi under Brachus. However, the truth of the deception enraged Brachus, who killed 3 of the guards. In a final act of desperation, the surviving guardsmen activated hidden explosives, destroying the Shadow Academy, though one managed to escape. This lone guard later attempted to unleash deadly plagues on the New Republic, but met his end at the hands of Nola Terracona of the Diversity Alliance. Finally, in 20 ABY, the last vestiges of the Royal Guard surfaced in tragedy. Former guardsman Chick Alpa, tasked by Moff Darren Takar with disrupting the wedding of Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker, launched a surprise attack. His effort proved futile, and Jedi Knight Mara Jade swiftly defeated him, marking another ignoble end for the once mighty protectors of the Empire.
Arsenal. The Imperial Royal Guard wore distinctive scarlet robes and armor inspired by groups like the Death Watch, Sun Guards, and Senate Guards. Beneath their ceremonial robes, they wore functional battle armor designed for both protection and mobility. The guards excelled in martial arts, including Echani hand-to-hand combat, and wielded weapons such as force pikes, which could deliver precise, lethal attacks. Heavy blaster pistols, vibro swords, arc casters, and, in rare cases, lightsaber pikes. Their force pikes were ceremonial yet deadly, capable of creating shockwaves. The guards were also proficient in exotic weaponry and operated red TIE interceptors for aerial missions. The guards developed their own combat language and underwent rigorous conditioning, including fingerprint removal, ensuring their anonymity. Their loyalty to Palpatine was absolute, with training emphasizing that his commands were infallible.
This episode is sponsored by Lamasu's Armor Cleaner. If your armor is dirty, dusty, or bloody from constant galactic conflict, then you need Lamasu's Armor Cleaner, a high-strength acid that will remove any dirt and grime from your armor. Do not touch with bare skin, inhale or look at directly. It may cause burns, ruptured lungs and arteries, melted eyes, or may cause your heart to literally explode. If you need your armor to sparkle, then you need Lamasu's Armor Cleaner. Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
And this is Jordan.
And we are currently hanging out in the Senate building of Coruscant, former home of the Senate, later Imperial Guards that we were going to discuss. But before we get into that...
Yeah, first of all, just want to thank everyone, all of our supporting listeners. We got a new one here today. Except I don't know exactly how to say his name is spelled out. It's either GLLP2 or GIIP2, like GIP2. So however you spell your name, sir, thank you. Thank you very much for becoming a supporting listener of the show. And if you guys want to become a supporting listener and get access to all of our bonus episodes, you can become a patron for $3 USD a month. We also do single buy episodes on Patreon as well. And you can do single donations if you did not want to do a recurring payment. So starlordspodcast@gmail.com is our PayPal, and we also accept Bitcoin. So we have our Bitcoin wallet in the description of the show. And yeah, also, if you want to do the $5 tier, which is our Jedi Knight tier, or Jedi Master tier, which is $7, you'll get unlimited access to ad-free listening, and I usually try and get the regular episodes a little early on Patreon too, so you get early and ad-free access to the new episodes. Also, if you can't support monetarily, not a problem. One way you could help us out is by rating and reviewing the show, as well as sharing the show on any groups, friend groups, anything like that. You can share the show to people who you think might like this content. That would be great. We really appreciate it. Also, follow us, get in touch. We love engaging with the community. So we are on Instagram, X, and Facebook. You can just search the Star Lords podcast or Star Lords. and on Instagram, X, and Facebook, and you'll find us. Follow the show, and we are also on Discord. So nice, lively conversation going on in the Discord. Hop in, meet all the other fans that are in there as well, and just help build the community because it's fun. For any other business inquiries, so if you have ads or if you had fan fiction or in-universe ads or a collection you wanted to show us, we often will post those on our socials. You can email us at starlordspodcast@gmail.com. So, all right. So yeah, send us your stuff and any business inquiries. We do get a few of those. So obviously the starlordspodcast@gmail.com is perfect, but you can DM us too. Don't mind at all if you want to DM us about a business inquiry. Not a problem. I think that's about it. Anything else I forgot, Christian?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. Yeah.
If not, I'm sure you mentioned it in one of our other episodes. So.
Yes. Everything is all the links to all our socials, all that kind of stuff. Our member support page. It's all in the description of the show. If you just go to our Doris link, it's like a link tree, and it'll give you everything that you need there. All right. So the Imperial Guard.
Yeah. I guess I'll start off by saying they are very cool. They're one of the, Star Wars is known for a lot of its iconic imagery, and I think they definitely are kind of one of the underappreciated elements. Maybe other people who aren't really into Star Wars might not recognize them, but definitely if you're within the Star Wars fandom, they pop quite strongly. Same thing as a Mandalorian armor, Darth Vader's outfit, or a Stormtrooper. Just very recognizable in their design. On that note, they were taken from concept art. I forget what the artist name was, but early on, their first appearance was in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And they kind of leaned on influences similar to, I don't believe it was, so Ralph McQuarrie is known for like the typical, prototypical Star Wars art. He's the originator of the designs for Darth Vader, Stormtroopers, Boba Fett, extension Mandalorian armor. But this was actually drawn up by a different concept artist who was kind of going for something between a centurion, like a Roman centurion, and a priestly robe kind of hybrid, which I think comes off very strongly. They look almost ceremonial as much as you never see them actually act on screen, which I think was sad. I think it would have been really cool to see them do something other than just stand and look menacingly over Palpatine's shoulder. And even in episode 3, there's kind of a funny thing with that is they don't do anything there either. They have the honor or dishonor of just getting force launched by Yoda as he walks into the room. Like, just does not. They look more menacing than they actually appear on screen.
Yeah, their on-screen appearances, though, they look sweet, and obviously that's like our introduction to them in Return of the Jedi. Obviously, there's like way more fleshed out about them in the EU material. It's like that's where people really
delve into them.
Yeah, go into, which I think is good. And actually, one thing I like about the Royal Guard is that it really is like a fleshed out history. Unlike maybe a lot of other like side characters or objects in the universe, like they really have like sort of this evolution up to the point of when you see like the Red Guard in Return of the Jedi. And so I think that's actually kind of cool. Like there's they kind of built all these other influences that led to the culmination of what was the Red Guard.
Yeah, but the funny thing is they did it in reverse in real life. Right?
Yeah.
They had the Red Guard appear, so then they kind of retroactively had to build up this whole backstory for them. And then you see like their earlier.
I think it works. Like I think how they explained it in the EU definitely works.
Yeah, you do see a similar trend too with things like clone to Stormtrooper armor evolution. So that kind of on that note, then let's talk about it. What will become the Red Guard, our first scene actually in episode 1, they appear as blue armored and robed sentinels for the Senate, for the Republic. They have their armor is a lot more ceremonial. They have like big plumes on their heads. I don't imagine Coruscant is particularly dangerous, although they are highly trained and highly skilled. We'll do a whole Sentinel episode on its own because they have a whole bunch of backstory too. But it's that body that eventually becomes a subset of elites that are turned red under Palpatine's rule, and their armor evolves too, actually, from episode 1 to episode 2. And then episode 2 to episode 3 is when you first see the Red Guard.
Yeah. And I also want to say too, this isn't actually unusual. I don't know what it's like in the US, but like in the Canadian Parliament, we have like the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, but you have like specific parliamentary guards, and they're actually like, if you look at them, they're not really dressed for like a tactical fight
situation.
Like it's very ceremonial the way that they dress as well. But they do carry guns on them, and they can,
and they're capable of using them. There was an attack on Parliament, and
this actually happened a few years back.
The guy who walks in carrying a big mace ceremonially, I believe, was also the guy that took down the attacker in a gunfight. So.
Yeah, they can be lethal. Like I don't know if it's as practical as like a regular police officer or like because they also have just regular kind of looking police guards around the building as well. But in the actual Parliament building, they have these ceremonial guards, if you will,
but who are more than capable of doing their job.
Yeah, exactly. But it sort of reminds me of the Imperial Royal. That's sort of the idea.
It reminds you in a lot of ways of the Empire, doesn't it?
Yeah,
the Canadian Parliament.
Yeah.
No, that's a good observation. Yeah. So these kind of ceremonial roles do exist in real life, but again, like that counterbalance of like looks versus practical, you don't have like a person decked out in like a SWAT outfit standing right beside your head of state.
Yeah.
Just going back quickly to their design too, there's also this talk of like the adoption of foreign mercenaries, the Theresians. If you remember, I can't remember what episode we did on them, but they're kind of like the counterpart to the Uchani. The Theresians and Uchani are almost like yin and yang to each other.
Yeah.
They're like another warrior culture. And their armor of the Sun Guard mercenaries is kind of what becomes the Royal Guard armor. So they look very similar. If you Google a picture of a Theresian, I think there's like one picture of them, and they look more like a tactical version of the Royal Guard.
Yeah.
The Royal Guard also do have tactical versions of their own armor. So you see them a lot in the ceremonial robes with the helmet, but then there's other iterations where they have more battle armor, and then there's even further, they have even Crimson Stormtrooper armor that they can choose to don if, say, they're going to like an active battlefield or something like that. So they do have the different versions from ceremonial all the way to like tactical.
Yeah, and we did kind of actually briefly touch on all of these influences in our armor episode, our part 2 armor episode. I did like touch on kind of the intersection of the Royal Guard, the Sun Guard, the Senate Guards, blah blah blah. How they all kind of amalgamated into what we finally see.
Yeah, and their design too is very much seen through that, right?
But I like that because that, to me, in like the real world, that is how things like
develop.
Yeah, develop. It's like through this evolutionary process where things like kind of borrow from each other. Cultural appropriation, dare I say, and then then they sort of just adopt certain, like even all of our, like the U.S. Capital is like sort of modeled off of Greek culture or something like that, right?
It's more Roman, but
yeah, but
Greco-Roman,
call it, yeah.
And same thing too with the design evolution. Like you see that a lot of that even in military history, right? Through the eras of like ancient and medieval armor, you can see as it evolves and kind of morphs from one helmet style to another. And even in modern warfare, right? Even going from, Napoleonic style combat to like wearing steel helmets.
Yeah.
How that steel helmet slowly changed shape over time until we have modern Kevlar helmets, right? Yeah. Like you can just see this trajectory of evolution.
Yeah, and having like colored coats to like army camo,
right? Exactly.
Like there is this evolution of
gradual change.
Gradual change.
Yeah. Another thing I want to touch on quickly is I know I mentioned in the concept art the idea of them kind of being modeled after Centurions, which is true, but functionally they operate more like Praetorians, from ancient Roman history. And it's interesting too. The whole bodyguard culture, Praetorians were known for a while to become like they were first handpicked by the first Caesars to be their personal bodyguards, right? Especially in the world of Rome, you have a lot of cutthroat politics going on. Like you need personal protection, and because a lot of the first Caesars were military men, they just brought on their most loyal veterans and skilled veterans. However, over time, as you kind of had a more entrenched elite develop, you had Praetorians that became comfortable, well paid, and even sometimes hostile towards the person they're supposed to protect. So you had this era of Roman history where they actually became kingmakers, and the Praetorians even like would murder emperors that didn't do what was in their interests. So just now this doesn't quite happen in Star Wars. There is a kind of a little side story of the Crimson Empire that we will actually do a full episode on later, so I'm not going to delve too deep into that. But it's just interesting to see that, again, influence of like the close protection. And I've always liked the idea of like bodyguards that aren't quite what they seem. They seem like the most loyal and the most fervent. Yeah. But also they have the most access to the person they're supposed to protect. So if they go rogue, then, you know, they fundamentally could end up controlling the state or the system behind the scenes, and you wouldn't even know it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's like a lot of cool elements now. Remind us, they typically pick members of the Royal Guard from like elite stormtroopers, right? Yeah, like that's where they're getting their talent pool from.
Most broadly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And also, just on the note of the evolutionary stuff, like even after the events of Return of the Jedi, there's a continued evolution of the Red Guard, and they even sort of end up becoming like a force using sort of
order,
quasi Jedi order. Like, yeah. Was it like 100 years?
Yeah, 150 years
after the events of Return of the Jedi. Yeah. So even that's kind of interesting. And by then they're like no longer wearing their helmets. Like they bear their full face and stuff like that.
And they're called Imperial Knights is what they become. Yes. Yeah.
And I think we've done an episode on that as well.
We touched on them briefly on the Legacy episodes. I do want to go back and do a more deep dive into the Imperial Knights as an organization and institution. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. You see that evolution in both directions. You see it from the past, and then you also see it go to the future. You also see some lateral evolution too. So you have some different iterations that kind of are modeled after the guards. There's the Imperial Sentinels, which are more protect the Coruscant area. I think like the Imperial Palace specifically. And they are also wear crimson. They have a more of I would say, Eastern influence, almost samurai looking armor. But it's definitely like the big heavy robes and stuff, definitely influenced by the Royal Guards.
Yeah.
And then within the ranks of the Royal Guard, we kind of touched on some cool versions that were revealed. So we kind of mentioned the different battle armors and stuff that a Royal Guard can wear. So in Crimson Empire, we are shown kind of like very cool armor that they can wear with their underneath their ceremonial robes. But then also, I keep wanting to say Fallen Order, Force Unleashed games give us other flavors of Imperial Guard. So you have Imperial Sentinels who protect the Senate mostly, and they wear a blue version of like a mixed battle armor and robes. And battle armor and robes 100% looks fantastic. I love robed battle armor.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Such a cool look.
It's very like Templar.
Yeah. Crusader, knightly. You also have the Royal Guards who typically you'll see Royal Guards carrying a force pike. That's what you see in the movies, but they also have like a lightsaber lance that they can use as well. So it's very cool. You see that in Force Unleashed, where they have like a staff and then a saber emits from the top of the staff. Yeah. And then they wear a combination of, again, that robe battle armor, but red and black. Yeah. And then finally you have the Shadow Guard, which are very cool. They're all black. Oh yeah. And they wield a red lightsaber. That's just 10 out of 10 design aesthetic. And they actually have some force talent too. So, they're not.
And on note on like the pikes, the using of the pikes, which is not a typical melee weapon you see in Star Wars, but I do like the idea, especially in terms of it is melee, but it can kind of keep enemies at a range and at a distance, especially when you're like actually doing bodyguard work. You're trying to if it's the worst possible scenario and the enemy has penetrated
all your other defenses.
In the same room as the Emperor, you can still at least keep people like at least 6-7 feet away, right?
Yeah.
Like with your
In
planes.
theory,
Yeah, in theory. I mean, obviously, like a very skilled Jedi can
bypass that.
Dispose of them. But I feel like, and again, they do this better in like Crimson Empire and other stories where they actually show them as being competent, and it would have to be a pretty skilled Jedi who can take on a
Royal Guard.
Yeah, a Royal Guard. So.
Yeah, and I think they also kind of suffer a little bit from like the Worf effect, or the same thing with Stormtroopers, where like in the cases that we do encounter Royal Guards, like the Force Unleashed, for example, like I just mentioned, you're dealing with such a powerful enemy that they can beat these Royal Guards, in a fight. And even in Force Unleashed, they are kind of little mini bosses. So they're not slouches in combat, certainly. But it's often that exposure to like the most powerful version makes them look a little weaker than they actually are.
Right.
So.
Yeah, like a Royal Guard in let's say a battlefield they were dispatched to, which they never would be. But if they,
in some occasions they might go for like a special target, or they might.
Now, wasn't there a subsection of the Royal Guard that is like they're literally sent on special missions for the
any
Emperor?
one of them can be.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's what they do, right? So like the Emperor could send them like a special envoys for some reason or another, or to protect a particularly valuable asset that the Emperor wants protected by his most trusted bodyguards.
Right.
Sometimes he sends them even to protect specific moths, or they want to go sharpen their combat skills. One thing that a lot of bodyguards might suffer from, and this even happened in Rome, is if you're off the front lines for long periods of time, you suffer from skill fade, right? You're not practicing, you're not actively engaged all the time if your asset isn't constantly under that severe of a threat versus like a battlefield veteran. So sometimes it's good to cycle people through close protection, get them in the field, get them doing the work that they're supposed to be doing so their skills don't dull and that they're constantly on their A game, right? And you can do so much with training too, but certainly there's something to be said for real world experience, right? And the Royal Guard do that. They sometimes take shifts out and, they want to sharpen their skills on the battlefield. They'll go connect with a Stormtrooper unit and go out with them, so...
Absolutely. Now, before we delve into the Disney depiction of the Royal Guard, I did want to make a mention. If anyone is a fan of miniatures or miniature gaming, the Star Wars Legion Royal Guard, you can get like a little team with like 4 Royal Guards and Palpatine. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm getting that. So
even if you don't play the game or anything, you just want them.
Yeah. I need that.
They should be pretty easy to paint too.
Yeah, exactly.
Mostly one color. Yeah. I will be picking some up myself too. I am into Legion.
Oh, are you? Okay. Yeah.
They're on my to-do list for sure.
Yeah. So, I want to get into Legions as well. So any listeners, if you're into Legions, let us know. Send us a picture of your army, of your Legion army. Yeah. All right. So
wait. Before we go into Disney too, I just want to make one more quick comment. I just wanted to touch one more thing on the Force Pike. Yes, using weapons that create distance with your enemy. A little known fact too is that the Force Pikes that the Royal Guard use actually can also shoot. So they are also guns.
Yeah.
And you see that too with so a little bit of some synchronicity, I guess, with Warhammer 40K. The Emperor of Warhammer 40K also has a very elite bodyguard who use gun spears as well as their primary weapon. One question that comes up in both worlds is Palpatine is this exceedingly powerful Sith Lord, as is the Emperor of Mankind. And the question comes up is why would an entity of such power, and like obviously Palpatine is also skilled as a warrior as well, need a bodyguard? Why would they need close personal protection if you're the best fighter in the field? I just want to address that because it does come up quite a bit in a few different pages, both for Emperor Palpatine and the Emperor of Mankind. Speaking more to Palpatine, because this is a Star Wars podcast, I'm not going to delve into the 40K thing because that's another whole bag of worms. But Palpatine's not always ready for a fight. Like there are points where he will be more vulnerable than others. He has to sleep at some point. He has to eat. He might rest, whatever that looks like for him. So there are points of vulnerability in any, even ultra powerful warrior. So always having like a core of bodyguards to keep constant surveillance over you is always a good idea. The other thing too is like, do you really want to gamble with your life in a fight? Like, sure, Palpatine is just supremely powerful, but you don't a stray blaster bolt, an explosion, there's other ways to attack a target. So having like a core bodyguards is necessary for even the most powerful warriors. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Or dictators.
And I will say, and this is only going based off what we've seen in the movies, but like Palpatine is obviously an elite lightsaber duelist. Like we see the fight between him and Yoda, and he can clearly handle a lightsaber. However,
he even strikes down multiple Jedi Masters in a duel, right? Like,
yeah,
and faces off with Mace Windu, who's the best known swordsman in the Jedi
Now
Order.
Mace Windu does best him in the duel.
Yes, but you're still dealing with a supremely powerful individual.
Probably, but that being said, Mace Windu is arguably the best duelist in the galaxy at that time.
Yeah,
like the best
absolutely.
lightsaber duelist. So, but he probably Palpatine is the most powerful Force user. So at the end of the day, I think the Force overcomes a duelist. But that being said, especially in Palpatine's like later years, he does seem like a little more frail and maybe not as
sharp as he used to be.
Yeah, with the blade as he was with his fight with Yoda, right? So you could sort of conceivably make a scenario where like if he actually had to duel someone or like get in a super physical altercation, he would struggle. But again, his Force abilities would just take over at that point, and it would be no
blast
contest.
him with Force lightning.
Yeah.
And also you even see Palpatine dismiss his Royal Guards when Luke is brought to him in his chamber, right?
Yeah.
And Darth Vader is there. He's obviously Palpatine's strongest asset anyway, so it's not a big deal. But there's a little also play of arrogance there as well with Palpatine.
Sure.
Yeah, and then just one last thing on the Legends Royal Guard is sometimes Palpatine would also send them out as spies. So he might send you his bodyguard as like a gift. Let's say you're a powerful Moff in a sector, but Palpatine doesn't trust what you're up to. He might, as a gift, send an envoy of royal guards to keep tabs on you.
Yeah.
And really just report back to Palpatine. So, you have these high-profile bodyguard protection, but really you're as much their prisoner as anything else. So,
yeah, he's more playing games with you.
Yeah.
Than
or collecting information on
you
you or anything else. So, yeah.
100%.
All right.
So the Disney depiction of the Royal Guards.
Yes.
What say ye?
So we see the Royal Guards as the Praetorian Guard in The Last Jedi, and they kind of operate as Snoke's bodyguards. Aesthetically, they're all red, but they are leaned more heavily into the battle armor aesthetic, and they have an assortment of different weapons. Some have like whips, some have smaller daggers, some have like glaives. The look I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't hate them, certainly. The aesthetic is not as cool as the Royal Guard or Imperial Knights.
Yeah.
But they're not the worst thing to come out of the Last Jedi. And that's not saying much.
Yeah. I mean, they do kind of have more like the Mandalorian helmet too, where it has like the visor slit going. It's not like how in The Last Jedi it was just the single visor across the eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's even variation in their helmet designs.
There is, and there's. I'm looking at them right now. There's even some that almost look samurai-ish, who have like multiple plates on their arms. So
I certainly get a stronger Eastern influence in their armor design. Again, I don't hate them by any means. I actually think some of them look cool, but there's also a variety of them.
Yeah.
Some of their weapon choices
they're not like uniform.
No.
In The Last Jedi. Yeah.
No, they're not. However, they are head to toe crimson.
Yes.
Which is kind of their unifying theme.
Yeah.
I have questions about their weapon selection, especially the small daggers. Everything we mentioned about using like you want to create distance with an opponent, especially in bodyguard work.
Yeah.
A small dagger is not necessarily
they kind of break that a little bit. And,
but
maybe their function has changed by this point. Who knows?
Maybe.
I don't know.
They might serve as assassins for Snoke. Certainly, we get as much of their backstory on screen as we do the Empire's Royal Guards, which is none.
Yeah.
And they also we get to see the biggest thing is we get to see them fight, which is an improvement. You can critique that fight itself, but the idea of having them actually engage in combat is a good idea. It's cool to see, like, if you're going to have bodyguards, you're going to make them look cool. It'd be also cool to use them. It's like Chekhov's gun, right? Like, why have them around if you're not going to display their awesome abilities?
Yeah, I thought it like visually looked pretty cool. But
yeah, certainly not my most hated aspect from Disney Star Wars, but not the direction I would have taken them. Like, I much prefer the EU's interpretation of Imperial Knights.
Yeah.
I think they're way cooler.
Yeah.
There is also kind of a nod to them in Disney Star Wars as well through these red armored Mandalorian type bodyguards. And they, I believe, serve Moff Gideon, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I believe they appear in the Mandalorian TV show. And the same idea, very like head to toe in crimson, kind of robe mixed with armor aesthetic.
Yeah.
Using pole weapons. They have certainly a more cool aesthetic, and they're more uniform as well. And then you also have the Sith troopers, which are just crimson armored stormtroopers in The Last Jedi. The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, okay.
And they're more of a regular soldier. They're an elite regular soldier. They're Sith troopers, but they're not.
And they use blaster rifles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're more like a more elite stormtrooper than they are.
Yeah.
Some kind of royal bodyguard, let's say.
Yeah.
Don't hate their design either. I kind of like it. I read somewhere that their inspiration was kind of like if a stormtrooper is like a skeleton, the Sith trooper is like a flayed human with like muscle. Like, if you got flayed, you'd be all red, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So like the Sith trooper, and they even have like striations in their armor that looks kind of like muscle tissue.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
With like all the different fibers. I thought that was a really cool design choice and explanation for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't say much more than that on the Praetorians, other than we see them fight. Once again,
I mean, I'm sure I haven't explored the Disney lore. I'm sure they have some more stuff, maybe in comics.
They certainly have a longer Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never been compelled enough to to look into it further. But just know that they still exist in some iteration in Disney, and Disney obviously took that influence from the Royal Guard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good episode on the Royal Guard.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah. If you guys do your own Royal Guard cosplay, send us a picture.
Yeah.
Those are always some of the
red bathrobe and a red bucket on your head or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, reach out to us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, X, and Discord. All the links are in the description, and we will see you guys on the next episode.